Strings are a very important part of programming. And so let's now learn about an easy way to build strings using something called template literals. And let's start by creating some new variables here about a person, and in this case about me, so that we can then concatenate them into one big string. And the birth year. Okay, and so let's now use these variables to build a string, something like, I'm Jonas, a 40 or 30-year-old teacher. So we're gonna then use this birth year to calculate the age, of course. So let's call that one simply Jonas. And as we already learned in one of the previous lectures, we can use the plus sign to concatenate strings. And so let's now start by doing that. So I want to write I'm, and here I'm seeing a problem. So when I want to use this single quote here for writing something like I'm or isn't, so basically when I need this symbol here, then I need to write the string itself using double quotes, okay? Because otherwise the single quote that I'm using here for I'm will finish the string. So I'm, and then I need a space, then the plus, and so here I'm saying I'm Jonas. And now I can actually use the single quotes. So what matters is that in each string, we start and finish with the same symbol, right? But both just create strings the same way. So right now we have I'm Jonas, comma, a, and now we want the age. So let's say a 30-year-old teacher. So we need another space here. And then let's actually calculate the age. So that's the current year. So let's put that here as well. And let's again say that the year is 2037. So plus year minus the birth year. Now, in order to make this work, we actually need to put this operation between parentheses. Like this. And so it will do the calculation first and then the concatenation. But you might be wondering, well, the result of this is going to be a number, right? But the rest of the things that we're adding here are strings. So how is this going to work? Well, this has to do with something called type coercion, which is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this section. But basically, JavaScript will simply convert this number to a string so that it can concatenate them, so that it can join them with the rest of the strings. So you will see that it's going to work just fine. Okay, years old. And then the job. And then we can finish with an exclamation mark or something like that. All right. And then let's also log this to the console so we can take a look at it. Okay. So I'm Jonas, a 46 years old teacher. And we're missing some spaces here. So that's around the years old. And you see that this is kind of a pain to manage these spaces and well, to keep track kind of how the sentence is structured. And so we will see a great solution to that in a second. So now it works, and yeah, just as expected. So as I was saying, for a complex string like this one, this can be kind of a pain. And so that's why starting with ES6, we have a much better tool for doing this kind of stuff now, which is called template literals. So with template literals, we can write a string in a more normal way and then basically insert the variables directly into the string. And then they will simply be replaced. So basically a template literal can assemble multiple pieces into one final string. So let me show you how that works. So let's call this one Jonas new. And now to write a template literal, we need to use backticks. So that's this symbol here. And on the English keyboard, you will find this one above the Tab key. So again, we really need to use these backticks to tell JavaScript that we're writing a template string. The single quotes or the double quotes won't work for what we're going to do now. So now, as I said, we simply write a string and insert the variables in there. So I'm, and then we use the $, curly braces, and then the variable name. So I'm first name. And just to see if this actually works, let's log it to console. So that's Jonas new. And indeed, I am Jonas. So you see that this is much easier because all we have is this one string, and then here we used this syntax to insert the first name variable. And now we can continue this, and it's going to be a lot easier. A, and then again a variable. Now in this case, we actually need a calculation, and that's no problem at all. We can basically write any JavaScript here inside of these curly braces. All right. Technically, we can write any expressions, but more about expressions in one of the later lectures. So year minus birth year, just as we did above. Year, old, and then teacher. So no plus signs, no thinking where we should put the spaces like we did here. And so this is a lot easier. Let's reload. Oh, and indeed, there is a bug here. So of course, that's not teacher. That's actually the value of the variable job that we're interested in here. But once again, we found this bug because we simply read the error message. So get into this habit of always reading the error message to try to figure out where you are wrong. All right. And now, of course, it works. And I hope that you can see that this is a way easier way of writing this string. This really kind of assembles the string using the pieces that we give it. For example, this variable here, or this value that is produced by the minus operator. Great. So now you know how template strings work in JavaScript, and in particular in ES6. And actually, it's one of the most used ES6 features. It's really amazing and really useful in many situations. Now, I just wanted to let you know that we can actually also use backticks to write all strings. So strings where we do not insert any of these kind of placeholders here, like this. So we just demonstrate that to you. So we can use backticks for any regular string. So you see that it works here just the same. And many developers actually started using backticks for all strings, because then you don't have to think about which quotation marks you should use. You just use backticks always. And then in case you need to insert a variable, then it's much easier than to go back and switch out the regular quotes. So that's a choice that you can make. I actually don't do that myself, but I can see that it actually makes sense. All right, now another great use case of template literals is to create multi-line strings. So that's something that before template strings was a bit cumbersome to write. So let me just show that to you. So if you wanted a multi-line string before ES6, you would have to write string with, and then you needed this \n, which in many programming languages means new line. All right. So basically this is like a special character in programming, which in strings always means that a new line should be created. And then in JavaScript, we would need another \, like this, and then we could move to the next line and continue here. Multiple, let's create a new one, and then lines. And this actually only works because of a bug that's in the language. But let's see. So we get string with multiple lines. And you see that it's all the same string, but yeah, spread across multiple lines. But indeed, now with template strings, there is an easier way of doing this. So all we have to do is simply hit return, and it will create a new line for us. And this is actually going to be immensely useful later when we start building HTML from JavaScript. So by then we will be able to use these backticks to create multi-line HTML elements to insert them onto a page dynamically. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's just see if this works. And indeed, it does. So whenever you need a multi-line string, you always make sure to use this template literal, because it's a lot cleaner. All right, and that's actually it about template literals. In the next lecture, we will finally start to make our code a lot more fun and take it to the next level by taking decisions.